Education Business Meeting of October 1, 2024. This meeting is being conducted via hybrid video conferencing and is being live streamed by the county channel. In accordance with safety and security guidelines, bags, backpacks, and purses are prohibited by the public at the Beaufort County Board of Education meetings. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker on Beaufort County School District and school-related topics. Citizens wishing to participate in public comments can do so in person or via phone. There are 2 scheduled public comment forum times during each board meeting. The first is a 30-minute session near the beginning of the meeting and is limited to topics on the board meeting agenda. The second comment forum time is a 15-minute session and takes place prior to adjournment and no later than 9 p.m. Requests to participate in public comments via phone will be accepted via email the day of the meeting from 5 to 5:30 p.m. for the first time frame and from 6 to 6:30 p.m. for the second opportunity. Requests should include the speaker's name, phone number, as well as topic, and must be emailed to the Executive Administrative Assistant to the Board, Robin Cushingberry, at robin.cushingberry@beaufort.k12.sc.us. Requesters will subsequently receive a phone call during their respective public forum time and should be ready to speak. Citizens desiring to participate in person must fill out a public comment card that can be obtained from the board clerk upon arrival. In the event the board is not finished addressing all items listed on the October 1, 2024 agenda, the board will reconvene at 6 p.m. on October 2 to finish the business. We now need a motion to go into executive session, Madam Secretary.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. I move that we go into executive session for the following: employment matter personnel ratification report pursuant to South Carolina Code annotated section 30-470A1, adult ed report pursuant to South Carolina Code annotated section 30-4-40A4, discussion of negotiations incident to propose HHISCA restroom renovation work using FY 2023 8% project funds, amendment number 19 to MBCon construction pursuant to South Carolina Code annotated section 30-4-70A2, and discussion of negotiations incident to propose MRES 2023 referendum scope guaranteed maximum price, amendment number 2 to Thompson Turner construction pursuant to South Carolina Code annotated section 30-470A2. And for the last one, discussion of negotiations incident to propose acquisition of property in Southern Beaufort County pursuant to South Carolina Code annotated section 30-4-70A2.
Do we have a second? Okay, I guess I heard Ingrid. So Ms. Boatwright second the motion made by Ms. Middleton. I see no hands up. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And online we have Hay.
Hey, aye. Hey, aye.
Thank you. Okay, the motion carries unanimously. We will now go into executive session.
Recording stopped.
Good evening and welcome to the Beaufort County Board of Education Business Meeting of October 1, 2024. This meeting is being conducted via hybrid video conferencing and is also being live streamed by the county channel. The board was just in executive session and we are now back in public session. And so, Madam Secretary, do we have any action as necessary or appropriate regarding the matters discussed in executive session?
Yes, ma'am. I have four motions here. The first motion, I move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent's recommendations for employment listed on September 1st, 2024 to September 30th, 2024 personnel ratification report.
Okay, second by Earl Campbell. Any discussion? Mr. Smith?
I'm going to abstain because I was not in executive session. Thank you.
All right, there being no further hands up, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Online?
Hey,
Okay. And you said abstention, Mr. Smith, so we have 8 yeses and no nos and 1 abstention, Mr. Smith.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent's recommendation for the monthly adult education report for October 1st, 2024.
Second by Victor Nay. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
hey,
Elizabeth Hay? Thank you. Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. 801.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Education approve amendment number 19 with MB Con Construction Company for the Hilton Head Island School of the Creative Arts restroom renovation work with a guaranteed maximum price GMP of $1,097,265 using FY 2023 8% funds.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Boatright. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hay?
aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? The motion carries 801. Mr. Smith abstained.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Education approve amendment number 2 with Thompson Turner Construction Incorporated for the construction of the new May River Elementary School based on the guaranteed maximum price, $53,217,243.
Okay, second by Chloe Gordon. Any discussion? There being no hands up, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Hey,
Hay?
aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, Mr. Smith. The motion carries 801. Smith abstained.
Madam Chair, that concludes all of our motions from executive session.
Thank you. All right, next we need approval of agenda, and I will just say that we do not have a student performance tonight, so we can just X that off the agenda. And with that change, do we have a motion to? Thank you. All right, the motion was made by Earl Campbell and second by Carlton Dallas with removal of the student performance. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Hey,
Hey.
aye.
The motion, excuse me, the agenda is approved unanimously. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Please be seated. The media has been properly notified. We do not have any first public comments. We'll have some later at the second time period. I do not have a chair report for tonight, so we're up to committee reports and Carlton Dallas reporting for operations.
Little Chihuahua's gonna run out now. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So we had our operations meeting on September the 19th, and we had a review of the 2019 bond referendum as well as the 2023. We also had other items that were covered, community outreach and what have you. But if I may walk through those and then ask Mr. Otting, he might step up so he can provide any details. But as you can see, on the first page of the executive summary, the first bullet, we're very close to completion. And one of the things we'd like to note is that at Robert Small's Leadership Academy, I want to compliment the team because there have been some delays in performance by some of the subcontractors. They've changed some of the contracts so that they're liquidated damages, and that those have been used to help inspire and motivate our business partners to accelerate their performance. So that's a good thing. Just want to note that. If you look at the bond referendum, the second bullet for 2019, see there are 30 closeouts. Those closeouts have been irritant for some time now. But one of the things that was identified by the team is that out of the 30 closeouts, 11 of those are under the purview of one provider. So if we can address that, basically are going to take out almost 37% of your delinquent closeout. So the team has been targeting that. Mr. Otting has been working with Mr. Vargas and Mr. Corbin, that group, make sure that that remains a high profile. And then to look at root cause analysis, what caused that particular one be delinquent? There are others, but one to have 11 out of our remaining 30, and those have been a challenge for finance as well because they're partners with us. Whole process. Just want to let you know that is something that is forward. In the third slide, you'll see that even though we're coming to the end of the 2019 referendum, there's still a contingency left of $184,000. So when you hear Otting and others talk about a soft landing, that has really been an amazing accomplishment in terms of the pandemic, the supply chain disruptions that have occurred during that period of time, accommodations and innovative solutions that were proffered to help it continue in terms of spending. Couldn't do anything about the scheduling because, I mean, that really changed the whole world. So that is where we stand on the 2019. And if you will allow me, I'd like to move to 2023. When you look through the larger package, see that basically all the items are still green. Now, this is early, but still green. And at this point, we haven't counted any major roadblocks. There's some things, but the team seems to be working very effectively. Those come up, they address them. May River Elementary School is submitted to the district for review. So that's good. That's moving forward. You also see some of the things that we're talking about, such as the new early learning center there. So things are moving forward. And one of the things I really want to highlight going forward is the new Ladies Island Middle School replacement and the community input that the team got very firm feedback led by board members that we need to be more effective in reaching out and penetrating into the community, and the team responded. So they had a second event that incorporated the board. I think, Mr. Smith, you were there, if I'm not mistaken. So that one of the things that came out is let's put the board, well, not put, but let's ask the board members to help lead that effort to penetrate and communicate into. That's in the infancy stages, but we feel very positive about using that methodology. The slides, as you can see on this back sheet, first one with the bullet, you see we've used very little of the contingency up until this point. And so there's been a lot of planning. I guess the rubber's getting ready to hit the road pretty soon in terms of actual construction and disbursements. But so far, the planning has been using things that have been learned from before. We talked about the community outreach. Again, kudos to Mr. Campbell, Ms. Gordon, Mr. Smith, and others who were there for that conversation, because they were the ones that said, let's be more active. And so they've taken forward that, and kudos to Mr. Otting for actually hearing and responding appropriate. In terms of requests for proposals, you'll see that down at the bottom, the construction, management at risk services moving forward, and then the professional design services also have been moved forward. That actually came in as required, September the 18th. Team has it. They're walking it around for the proper approvals. So they have a meeting and the committee that will review it scheduled for next week. And so things are moving forward. So with that, Mr. Otting, would you like to step forward, sir? And is there any specific question?
Be glad to answer any. I think you covered it quite well. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Kimball.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. And me and Mr. Otting have spoke about this before. We spend a lot of money for these people that cut the grass. I think we need to get down on them more because they're not doing the job. They'll come on and cut edge front where you can see it, but they don't go in the inner part of it. So I hope that we can do a better job on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Is there any of the other items?
Nope.
We're good. All right.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you, Mr. Dallas, for your report. We're down to student achievement, new ELA standards on the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Quads. Dr. Stratos and her team are coming forward, to share an update with you regarding any shifts or changes to ELA standards.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Dr. Rodriguez. So we have a mighty team of Ms. Murray this evening, our Director of Literacy. I do want to take a moment to pause for you to understand the work that has taken over a year of work that Ms. Murray and her two coaches have executed in combination with all the literacy coaches here in the district. With that, I want to turn this opportunity for your education on English Language Arts new standards. And as we go forward this academic school year, you'll start hearing a little more about the math new standards that are coming down from the state as well. Mrs. Murray.
Good evening, and thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited to share with you an update on the 2024 ELA standards. As you know, last year we worked really diligently to prepare for the standards and full implementation. And this year we are in full implementation of the 2024 ELA standards for instruction and assessments. Standards are required at each state as outlined in the Education Accountability Act. This act requires all core content areas in each state to adopt educational standards following specific guidelines. These standards are the core of our instruction and assessments. The 2024 standards have an updated layout. The sample here you will see, the upper left is the new standard codes. This code is consistent kindergarten through 12th grade. Below, you will see the updated strands for the ELA standards. And to the right, you see a sample page from our standards. At the top is the strand. This is the large organization for sections within our standards. Next, you see standards. This represents what we want all students to know and be able to do, but the indicator is what is specific to each grade level. This may mean you will hear the language of strand, standard, or indicator, but all are referencing aspects of our 2024 ELA standards. This slide shows you a piece of one of our support documents published by the South Carolina Department of Education. These educator insights were written and approved by the Office of Standards and Instruction at the South Carolina Department of Education. These insights provides clarifying information to help our educators have a clear understanding of the state expectations. Another support document provided is called the Vertical Articulation Document. This document shows the progression of indicators to the standards within each strand. See, that's why I had to show you that at first. It gets confusing. This is available for all standards and indicators. This is extremely helpful to ensure we are instructing on grade level and to see how our standards progress. At the beginning of the standards document, you will find this standards map. This color coding system is used throughout all the standards and support documents. This visually helps to make the strands clear. This page also serves as a guide to each standard, the indicators that fall within the standard, and the grades in which you will find at that standard or indicator to be taught. The first strand in our standards document is the foundations of literacy. For the 2024 standards, this strand has an increased number of indicators that are more specific than our 2015 standards. This strand is subdivided into 4 standards: phonological and phonemic awareness, concepts of print, decoding and encoding phonics skills, and fluency. These standards are then organized into 24 indicators that are mostly focused in grades kindergarten through 2nd. Applications of reading is the next strand. The 2024 standards organize this strand into 10 standards that represent the required reading skills across all genres of reading. This means that we teach these skills within fiction and nonfiction as appropriate. And you may recall in the 2015 standards, they separated nonfiction, fiction into different skills and strands. So this is a change. Research is the next strand. Like the foundations of literacy strand, this strand has additional standards and indicators. Some of these begin in 2nd grade. When you look at the vertical articulation document around the research strand, you will see the development of the research process. These standards focus on the process of research, not a product, and ask students to critically think about the steps of research. Written and oral communications is the final strand. This strand reflects all modes of writing, including argumentative writing, informative writing, and narrative writing. It reflects a shift from text-dependent analysis to a more comprehensive writing system for the students of South Carolina. In addition, standards also focus on the revision and editing process and how it progresses across the grade levels. The state has published a support document to show each of the grammar and convention skills and which grade level they should be taught. And while not standards, the state has clearly articulated overarching expectations for the English language arts classroom in South Carolina. These are practices within the classroom that is expected of all of our students. I have mentioned a few other support documents, but I wanted to wrap up by sharing that the state also published a glossary of terms. These are directly related to our indicators and create a common language across our state for standards and assessments. Our curriculum maps have been fully revised kindergarten through 12th grade to reflect the 2024 standards, and our ongoing work is to ensure consistency of understanding and support all of our educators and students through our professional development and literacy coaching. I hope this shares some insights into the 2024 ELA standards, but do you have any questions at this time? Thank you.
All right, Ms. Boatwright.
Thank you so much for all the work and the presentation and the color coding. It makes it a little bit easier to follow. As a non-educator teacher, I understand the concept of standards, but it is a lot when you try to apply it to something as broad as education. So this was really helpful. This is a more philosophical question, and I know I'm on one extreme of this spectrum. But one of the things that I'm interested in, and I hear a lot about in my sphere, is personalized learning. Particularly as it relates to technology and software and different things like that, that on the horizon is an environment where kids can have they'll learn to read in a more personalized manner. And I saw that with my 3 children who all learned to read very, very differently. Some of them, my daughter was an avid reader at a very young age. My son didn't really want to read until he got into some nonfiction, and different things motivated them. How do you take something as complex and as these standards and then look at, maybe how you personalize that for some children who maybe just have a different approach, a different timeline, a different interest than the one that's in these standards?
Because it is for children, it is complex, but the systems we have in place to support that are, the standards are our guide. That is what we want all students to know and be able to do. But our work with NPLC, our work with NPD, our work after and analyzing our assessments are in service of looking at where the children are. What are their misconceptions? What do they need? Think about those individual learners. So we also have those works and those structures in place to support how do you differentiate so all children can get to here, but they might have a different path. So a lot of our other systems are really in service of supporting that. And even how we write our curriculum maps are in service of supporting this idea that children are going to get there in maybe different ways, but our goal is to get everyone there so then we can be along the progression for students.
Mr. Dallas?
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Thank you, Madam Chair. Question I have is, the U.S. is really having to compete globally. And so how do these standards compare with some of the best school systems in the entire world?
The world is more complicated, but this does come from a federal guidance. And so there is regulations to ensure that each state standards are reflective and support one another.
Can you build on that?
Mm-hmm.
And the state standards are being built in order to develop stronger outcomes with ACT and SAT testing. So that is a global mark right there. We want to start analyzing our student outcomes with the high school testing that's utilized nationally and actually for access to international universities. So they are doing a much better job at the state level to build for that type of outcome and greater success with our students as well.
Yes. One
more question, and this is really, as Ms. Boatwright said, the way you've explained it and visually presented it, it makes it easy even for someone like myself. Could this be one of those things that could be packaged, say, under Dr. Bruder's effort to penetrate into the community and identify certain groups of parents who would benefit from knowing this is what your kids are going through? Because when you reviewed the books, the new book authorization, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 months ago, I took home about 6 books and boy, I wish I hadn't done that. But the funny part is I was blown away by what the kids have to learn.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
And general public has no idea about that. And it's far different from C. Jane Run that I was taught 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just wondering about that.
So that's actually going to build on 2 points, Mr. Dallas. One is our BCSD University, where our division will be doing a presentation. We'll roll out what you have this evening to a little more complexity, because I also want to have people see the science standards and break those down and for you to understand, well, where do you think what grade level this is? That's going to be an exercise that we will do at our division. And to build on that with the communications department, we'll be working at more of a marketing package for the community to understand our district strategic plan, so that it could be in language for the community and to roll out stuff as Melissa has brought forward as well, sir.
I've got a couple remarks. One is you mentioned that the standards of 2015. So was that the last time that this was updated, I guess would be the word to use?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's been nine years. And on the Y standards, under that section, you have inform instruction and assessment. So I guess I'm not clear about the assessment. I see all these things that they are, expecting or, want the teacher to be sure they're teaching. So then how is the child assessed?
So along with that, federal legislation that requires the standards that are more nationally aligned, comes the next step is our assessment has to be aligned to the update within our standards. So the SC Ready, the children would have, when they took it last year, there was going to be additional field test questions that reflected these standards. There will be even more field test questions for them. Last year, in fact, the children took a field test of the new writing. So they had to take the previous writing assessment and the new writing assessment. And all of that was in service of preparing the update to SC Ready to ensure that it aligns to any changes that the states make within their standards.
So being in the medical field, the teacher is not required to go down these lists and say, okay, does this child meet boom, 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 and check them off. It's another assessment that incorporates
Yes,
these
ma'am. Yes, it's going to,
standards.
right.
Yeah.
It incorporates it, and the new test blueprints reflect which one of those indicators will be reflected on the assessment. So the State Department now has an Office of Standards and Assessments that work together really nicely. So many of the support documents show both, and it makes it much more clear for our educators.
Thank you both.
You're very welcome.
I think one of the things to keep in mind with all sets of standards and assessments is that there's a rigor component to all of these things, right? And the assessments assess at different rigor levels, right? So they can take a question on the assessment and assess it at a lower level cognitive rigor, okay? And then ask another question covering the same standard, assessing it at a much higher cognitive level rigor, but it depends on the construction of the assessment, right? And so the trick is, does instruction and the actual execution of instruction match, right, the rigor level of what the different standards are being assessed? What are they being assessed at, right? So it's not just an alignment of, am I hitting the right standard, but it's also an alignment of, am I hitting the right rigor, right? So that's the complexity of instruction. That's the art and the science of teaching.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Next on our agenda is under board business action, change in food services fund reporting. Tanya Crosby, CFO for the school district.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Speaking of complexity, this is an accounting complexity, and I will do my best to simplify it for your understanding. This is all of my world and not typical for educational conversation, but it is based on what our auditors recently advised was necessary to come before the board for approval this evening. So diving into this. So the school district has about 8 major funding sources: general fund, special revenue, EIA, debt service, capital projects, food service, and student activities. 6 of the 8 of those are governmental funds. And that means that a governmental fund is, you have tax revenue, local funding, like tax revenue, state funding from the Department of Education, and federal revenue oftentimes as well. So those funding sources are identified by the revenues that support the activities in those funds. And they have a certain type of accounting. We go on a cash basis of accounting. So if you spend $1 million on a piece of equipment, you expense the entire thing in that fiscal year. So as in contrast, the food service fund is a different type of fund. It is a proprietary fund. Instead of expensing that $1 million that year, we are required to capitalize the equipment and only expense a portion of it in terms of depreciation. So if an asset is a 7 or 10 year, let's say 10 years for purposes of simplicity, I can only expense $100,000 that year. So the issue we're having is that we have accumulated, after COVID, we had significant federal funding from the ESSER funds, and we have accumulated a fund balance. And so in the last 3 years, we are required by the USDA to prepare an excess operating balance, we have to provide a plan to spend down. In those 3 years, we have spent $3 million to reinvest equipment, replace equipment in our kitchens, in our cafeterias. If you notice, as you go through the schools, our cafeterias, many of them have been outfitted with new tables and cafeteria tables. We have outdoor dining spaces now. That was intentional because of COVID, to get outdoor dining and separation, given some students' ability to spread out a bit, shade structures in those dining spaces, and replace the fleet of vehicles in the food service department. So a whole series of things we've done, but we're not getting credit for that in the looks of our fund balance because we're having to depreciate it over such a long period of time. So I posed also I'm not following the script exactly here, but I figured it was better to tell a story than anything. Also, our food service fund has changed drastically, the way we bring in revenue. In the last few years, we have moved from having no schools in the all school-wide eligibility. The community eligibility program is where you students receive a free lunch and a free breakfast each day. So we began by adding 8 schools several years ago. Then we expanded another 10. And then another 10, we were at 21. And this school year is the first year we are district-wide CEP. So all students in the district are eligible for one breakfast and one lunch every year. What that does to our revenue stream is you're not having parent payments any longer. You're moving to a full federal governmental revenue source. Everything is coming from USDA. There's small portions of things, catering income, a small portion of a la carte sales. If there's an extra bag of chips or a Gatorade, students can buy that. Very small amounts of revenue there. So we're moving from a fee-based or proprietary type environment to a governmental environment. And so really that lends to the fact that it is a governmental fund. It's really enabling and supporting this change that we're proposing this evening. So our auditors, Malden and Jenkins, we have a new team actually out of Columbia this year. And I spoke with them about the challenge and they said, why don't you move it to a governmental fund? And I thought, well, that's a great idea. So this evening, this evening I'm proposing that we follow the recommendation. As a result of what would that require of us in the district? In the finance department, we would have a prior year adjustment of any assets and depreciation and any other liabilities that are applicable to a proprietary fund that would not necessarily be on governmental. We'll remove those, expense the difference, and that will that will give us a prior period adjustment for a fiscal year 23. And then we will expense all assets that we purchase in fiscal year 23-24 in this year's financials that we're working on right now and finalizing this year's data to finalize our financial statements. So what I'm proposing this evening is authorization to transition the food service fund to a governmental fund for purposes just of financial reporting. It is no cost to the district. It is just a presentation change in the financial statements. In my opinion, it is, I believe that the current presentation is misleading because it provides a higher fund balance than we actually have. And this would reflect more accurately the state of our finances in that fund. So that is my recommendation this evening. I hope that I help to simplify that as much as possible. And I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So you've told us why this is the positives of doing this.
Yes.
So what is the negatives? Are there any, can you think of any negatives for doing it this way?
Well, I tried to think of some. The only negatives are a couple of journal entries on our side
Yeah.
and a couple of changes in the presentation on the auditor side, but we contract with them to prepare our audited financial report. So it's a prior period adjustment, one journal entry. And we have the journal entry ready to go if the board, so we've already prepared it. It wasn't a significant amount of time to create it. We just looked at last year's balance sheet and did some debits and credits and figured out which ones they were. It will have a $2 million effect. It will lower the fund balance from $10 million to $8 million. And then we would have to reverse a couple of journal entries that we had already done to capitalize equipment in fiscal year 24, which reversed those back. And that's it. And it will, the best thing it will do is decrease that we have a report to the state and the USDA of the use of excess operating balance. That balance will decline by $2 million immediately this year. So that puts us in a better position to meet the requirements to use that balance in a reasonable period of time.
And you mentioned just now in your answer, thank you, that the current way that the accounting is done inflates the fund balance slightly. I guess
$2 million, yes.
By $2 million.
Mhm.
So is that in any way going to affect our bond rating?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Bond rating is looked at from our special revenue funds and general fund. Food service is not considered in that. It also, the type of governmental fund it would become is a special revenue fund, and special revenue funds are restricted. And food service funds are extremely restrictive, probably more so than any other fund we have. It must be used, these funds must be used for the benefit of students as they are, as they consume meals in the school district. So it has to deal with food and students. And if it doesn't relate to that, it's not able to be utilized for payment.
Okay. I think Carlton had a question too. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I just would like to weigh in and say that Ms. Crosby, CFO Crosby, came and asked if I would take a look at it. Coming from the business world, we changing your methodologies as long as they're in the business world, as long as they're consistent with FASB and GAAP, which are the requirements that the oversight board makes sure on a good rating. She had already consulted with our auditors who raised it. I think you consulted with some other school districts.
Dorchester too.
Dorchester.
They had switched over 6 years ago.
When she asked me about it to make sure I wasn't sort of driving, saying something off kilter, I conferred with some of the accounting entities in eastern half of the state and asked them if they had seen it. That it happens quite frequently. And in the business world, to give you an example, if we start out and create a company that uses FIFO, first in, first out, inflation takes off and you want to cover some of your inventory, you go to LIFO, you can make that change. It's legal, it's ethical, and this has been proven to also legal, ethical, and it makes sense. And to give you another example, if you've ever heard of green mail, that started because in retirement funds had too much cash. And David Murdoch went into Kannapolis and he actually did an analysis, saw their retirement funds had all this cash. He bought it, drained the cash, paid all his investors, and that's where green mail comes from. So there's risk, as you're saying, the optics of us having too much is not a good thing. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for that elaboration. All right.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion. I move that the Beaufort County Board of Education authorize the transition of the food service fund to a governmental fund for purposes of financial reporting effective in fiscal year 2023, 2024.
All right, second by Mr. Dallas. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hey. Okay, she says aye. She just put in the chat. Any nays and any abstentions?
Mr. Smith abstain.
Okay, so the motion carries 901.
Okay, thank you.
No, excuse me, 801, because we only have 10 board members seated. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Crosby. Next up, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda for September 17th, 2023 board meeting minutes.
And I see Ms. Boatright's hand up. She'd like to second it. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Hey,
Hey, I.
any nays? Any abstentions? Did you vote, Mr. Smith? Okay, so the motion carries unanimously. Do we have future agenda topics? Mr. Nay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There has been some discussion and presentation about our stipend schedule. And we haven't had any type of update about the stipend schedules going out. There was $500,000, I think, were earmarked for stipends. But we haven't really discussed where the stipends are going or how they're being done. Can we get an update on that?
And what stipends are you referring to? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. First, I thought you meant board stipends. And I'm
No,
like,
no.
what? Yeah, okay. All right. So that might be best under go first to academics or finance, maybe finance. Yeah. Okay. So Mr. Guyer is not here tonight, but I will pass that on to him. Okay, as the chair.
I don't have a future topic, but because the school
Well,
year,
that's where we are, Miss Boatright.
it's a future comment. Are we at the 45-day? We should be getting close to that because we started so early in August, the 45-day numbers. So
That would be a future topic.
Thank
Thank you. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a topic. All right. Next, we have announcements. Oh, no, yes, announcements. And Pardo, who has been our assistant to the executive assistant to the school board for many years, is leaving our department and going to communications. So we'd love you to come on up. Oh, Molly. We'll go up to the podium. The Board of Education thanks you for your many years of service to us, and we wish you well in your new field here in the district. Molly's going to communications department as a graphics designer, as a manager, and she's also becoming a boy mom. We have a card and some flowers for you. We now are to our second public comments, and we have two tonight here in person. Mr. Jim Miller will be speaking about median, I believe it's tenure of band director revisited. So could Dr. Lee, do you mind moving the podium so we can see Mr. Miller?
I can make myself heard.
Well, you're kind of blocked. Thank you, Mr. Smith. 1 second.
Thank you all. I appreciate being able to speak with you again. I wish when I hear what I've been doing is hopeful that an agenda will come out with something relative to you folks addressing the issue that I bring up. And until that is done, I will continue. However, as an quote, excuse, if you will, I worked for a rather major pharmaceutical manufacturer and had a lot of contact with advertising people. They had an adage that said, you've got to hit them 7 times before they know anything what they're doing. So this tenure of the band directors, this is the second time. I'm coming back 5 more. If you recall, I referred to a rather substantial decline or increase in band director resignations. This past year, 2 years, this year and last, 2/3 to 3/4 of the band directors' positions were open. This current year, half have not even been replaced. If that was an elementary position, if you had, well, comes out to work out as the median tenure is 1 year. In other words, half of the band directors quit after a year. Something is wrong. I have volunteered and worked with band directors now for 10 years. I have a pretty good idea of some things that ought to be changed or need to be addressed. However, they come under the HR area, and this is not the place for me to talk about them. But I hope that somewhere you folks will find a way to address the problems that I have raised with the bands. We have one. Well, let me close with saying I appreciate this is the band season. Battery Creek has been to a contest. I've watched them on the football game. May River and Beaufort or Bluffton have been to contests.
Mr. Miller, your time is
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mary Foster, and her topic is Banned Books Week and Book Challenges.
Good evening. I'm Mary Foster, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I am a professional educator with more than 25 years of teaching experience. I'm the mom of 2 college students who grew up here in Beaufort, and I'm the programs director for Families Against Book Bans, better known as FAB. As you may know, last week was National Banned Books Week, and we at FAB celebrated by hosting a screening of the documentary Band Together that was filmed partially here in Beaufort. It tells the story of the books that were challenged here in the fall of 2022 and the way that our community rallied around students to protect their freedom to read books not opposed by their own parents, and also teachers and librarians who are professionals and deserve to be treated as such. The film also shares information about similar challenges across the state and country, and I hope you all get a chance to see Band Together soon. I wanted to come and speak with you tonight to remind you of the effort this community made a couple of years ago and to ensure you that we are not finished championing the right to read. With the passing of State Regulation 43170 this summer, we are all too aware that the 91 books you voted to return to our school shelves are now in danger of being permanently removed by our State Board of Education, in addition to countless other titles. I'm here to ask for your transparency as we begin to feel the impact of those regulations. I'd like to request that you make a list of any titles that are formally challenged in our district, easily accessible to all citizens, perhaps on the district website, as at least one other county in our state has done. If you've already done that and I just was not able to locate it, please do let me know. Parents, teachers, librarians, students, and community members deserve to know when there are books being challenged in our community. People volunteered in droves to be on review committees in the past, and I feel confident they'll do it again. Students, teachers, librarians, and other supporters of intellectual freedom showed up at your board meetings to tell you that most of our community does not support a minority of parents, particularly those with no background in education or library sciences, deciding what books all students do or do not have access to. Our opinions on this have not changed, and we need to know what's happening in our district so we can respond accordingly. As always, thank you for all that you do and for your commitment to the students, teachers, and parents of the Beaufort County School District.
Thank you. Robin, do we have any online commenters? All right, there being none that are going to join us by phone, we are now down to adjournment, and we can adjourn by unanimous consent if there are no objections. Good night, and thank you to everyone that is in attendance tonight.